here's our plans for today. Get that database all maintained and working. Remember where we stopped. Let's go back to where we stopped and we will continue the work here. So let's go find that access file I was working on. And let's go to section 2, Smart 3, there it is. Where we ended up, let's do just a quick little review. Where we ended up back there was that mass changes in our database. Oh, we didn't do the mass changes. I don't see my update query. Well, we better get our update query working. Did you do the update query or did we not do that? Does that sound familiar? Making mass changes? All right, we'll get that. That was the very last thing. We did get to that in section 1. That's what I forgot. We didn't quite make it there, but it's not that hard to do. Let's get the mass changes done. Yeah. Oh, I forgot. We had some online friends. Forgot all about our online friends. Thanks for reminding me. They'd be out there watching a blank screen the whole time. Sorry, I forgot about you out there. I was all excited with all the things going on here and left you out there out in the internet all alone. You had each other to comfort though, so you're all right. So here's where we are. We are back with Access 3, AC3. We're going to finish this up today, so here's a quick little look at the agenda for today. We're just going to finish up Access Project 3, Part 2, and where we're at with that is we have all the queries that we built. And let's take a quick look at our, I think it's the vendors table. Let's take a look at our vendors table. And we see here that the product type of our vendors, we've kind of messed with that. And we can enter product types. And there's our 3 main product types, VAC, MC, or SUP. But suppose I have a list of 500 vendors and there is something I need to set for all of them. I could go one by one and set them to some value, or I can do a very dangerous but yet powerful thing here, which we're going to do right now. We're going to build a update queries. An update query is the most dangerous query because it can change everything in your database all at once. It does give you a little warning, but let's go see how we can write an update query. I'm zipping back to the page where this is on. If you're in your textbook, it is right there on page AC3-26. Okay, here's how we're going to do. We're going to build an update query that's going to make a change all to everyone all at once of my product type. Watch how this works. I'm going to close this table just because I want to keep things neat and not have too many things open at the same time. Go to Create and click Query Design. The table that we're going to make the change to is our veterinary vendors. So double click and close the show table. And in our veterinary vendors table, the only thing we're going to make a change to is product type. I don't need anything else down there in the selected fields. And for now, let's just run this query just to see that I'm going to see the product type for every vendor. I don't even know what vendor it is. I just know that some have this product type and some don't have any product type supplied at all, which is also a problem because we should require them to have something there. But we're not going to worry about that. We're just going to put something there by changing it from a normal select query to a very powerful and dangerous update query. The next most dangerous query would be the delete query. That would delete records and they're forever gone from your database. Well, we just click on update, and what happens when I click on update, it adds 2 little rows here. One is update to, and there could be a criteria that would apply to what gets updated. We're going to create a very simple update query. We're just going to say in the update, we're going to type VAC. What this is going to do is say, without any criteria, that means we're going to update every product type for every record in the veterinary vendors table. We're going to update their product type to VAC, vaccination. And to run this query, all I do is click Datasheet View or Run, and it will execute. I think, let's see, Datasheet View. Oh no, Datasheet View actually doesn't make the change. When I run it, let's see what happens. Now, when I run it with the exclamation point, not only does it show what records are going to be affected, it was going to make the change, and it gives me my last chance to back away and cancel this if I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing. This is where, before you run update queries, you think to yourself, do our IT people have a backup of our database? Will this possibly cause a problem? If it does, do we have a backup? Even if you're not running backup update queries, if you are using anybody's database in your company, in your future job, always have that in the back of your mind. Is somebody backing it up? Because if this data is lost, your website might go down. You might lose contact with customers. You might lose the orders that your customers are paying for. People get very angry and upset with your company, or your employees get angry if something about your database gets lost. So even if you're not the database administrator, you should know to ask the database administrator, do you have updates? Before we make this change to our inventory, is our database backed up? Because any change to the database, unless you have made a separate copy of it, once you click yes, that database has been changed. How do I know it's been changed? I can go to my table of veterinary vendors, and I see over here in the product type, look at that, they have all been changed to VAC by me running that query. Very powerful and dangerous query. With no criteria, this means I'm updating all records, product types, to VAC, no matter what was there before. And so that's our append query, and we're going to save this query. Let's see, do they give us a name for this query? They didn't give us a name, so let's call it AC3-27. So let's do a save of that query.
Mr.
Yes?
Name? Something I'm working on.
All right. We're going to do a little troubleshooting here. Comment check what's going on. All right, so you have create, you have your query design. Now click the home tab. Go back to, click the design tab. There we go, it's a run, it's a query. This is where connect contain a multi-value. I have the same thing. Oh, we did make it a multi-value, didn't we? No, the appointment type is multi-value. Let's go back to, click on the design view of our table. Upper left, the triangle, that's a design view. Now click on product type, and click on the lookup tab down below, very good, and uncheck turn allow multiple values to be off. Because it's the appointments that have multiple values. The product type should only have one value. Now go ahead and close and save that change. Save the change or close the table and we'll ask me yes. Yep. And now go back to the query and it should run just fine. Click on the design tab. Yeah, you need to close that table. It's always good to close tables to make access convenient. Yes. Okay, now go to the design tab up above. Or sorry, go there. See the, yeah, now click the exclamation point will actually do the changes. Oh, go ahead and close that query. And update to VAC. And now exclamation points.
I think that when you changed the table, it said it wouldn't.
Oh, it didn't let you change it to a multi-value field? Let's go ahead and close this query. Go back, yeah. Go ahead and no changes. We'll let design view of our table again. Product type. Properties down below under the lookup. Limit to list, yes. Oh, allow multiple values. That turned back to no. Turn that back to no. You double click or you click the thing on and change it to no. Okay, now do a save. Make sure it lets us save this project.
You cannot reverse the setting.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
That's what.
oh, I thought it meant when you make the change, you can't come. There's not an undo. It's not letting you change. Wow, that's interesting. I hadn't noticed it won't let you change it back. You cannot reverse this setting. No, don't worry. At least we know how to make an update query. So in yours, if you go back to view, you can manually change product type all to VAC. So we just learned something new. If it is multiple value, you can't change it back. That's the most irritating thing. I would have thought you could change it back, but you're fine. That's an interesting. I just learned something. We just learned that if you change a field to multiple value, it doesn't let you change it back. I had not ever run into that problem before. Okay, so we're saving this update query. I think it'll still let you save the query, but when you run it, it'll say, sorry, I'm not going to let you change it. But don't worry about that. That's something that it's only because we accidentally changed that to multi-value. Okay, so query name, we're saying that AC327, we'll call it update query. Update product type to VAC. Now, most of the time, when you're doing the change, typically you only do it at one time, and you often don't save the query. The only reason we're saving the query is to prove that you actually made it. But you'll see the little exclamation point on it, reminding you that, hey, this is dangerous, watch out. And when you do run it, or when you do open it, it usually gives you this warning, hey, do you really want to do this? Remember that backup. Not only with all your files, all your papers, everything, all the work you've done, have a backup. Databases especially, because much of the time you can't undo changes you've made. Okay, that was probably the most dangerous thing we're going to do here with databases. The next thing we're going to do is add some rules about what can go into our database. These are called validation rules. First thing we're going to look at is, and again, we're going to do this on our veterinary vendors table. That's what we're paying attention to this time. Let's right-click design of our veterinary vendors table. And what we're going to do is adjust some things here in this table. I'm going to close this tab just so I can see more of my table here in design view. Right now, if we click on zip code and I see my properties down below, I see that the field size for zip code was left at 255 characters. And that's way more than I need for zip code. Remember, we had gotten this data from an import of a table, and it was probably from some rookie that hadn't taken this class to know how to set field sizes other than the default 255. They gave you their table, but they didn't change the setting as they should. Now, I would have probably shortened this to 10, but in the book they ask you just to shorten the field size to 20. So simply type a 20 in the field size for zip code, and now we have modified what the maximum zip code size can be. Now, before we go on, let's go ahead and do a Control-S save, because it's going to give us an important warning. Whenever I shorten the length of what can go into a column, it gives me that warning of, hey, by the way, if you do have a zip code or anything here that's longer than 20, it's going to be cut off. And they give you a scary message. One or more fields is changed to a shorter size. If data is lost, validation rules may be violated as a result. Microsoft's way of making you scared of what you're doing, but all it means is, hey, we've shortened the zip code size. The zip code's longer, will be cut off. And we know that all our zip codes are short, so we can go ahead with yes, continue. Now it's time to require a field. We would like to make sure that they never enter a record and leave the vendor name blank. Now we're not going to worry about the field size, although 255 is probably longer than they need for vendor name. But we want to make sure that they do put in a vendor name. Do you see down in the properties there? There's a little required property. And by default, that's no. If you double click on that, it will toggle it to yes. Toggle again, it turns it back to no. So we want required to be toggled on to yes. They cannot leave without having typed some vendor name if they're entering new data into our table. Now another thing we would like to do in this vendor table is in the quantity, if we click on quantity, and the properties of that field, we would like to not have them enter invalid quantities, such as negative numbers. Remember last time we changed this from a field size of a single to, it was integer, we changed it to single. We also want to, well, I guess we'll leave the default value at 0, but our validation rule, actually let's make the default value of 1. It doesn't make any sense that they would not supply us anything. Let's set the default value of 1, but let's set the validation rule to be this. Greater than symbol and 0 is the rule that will be tested on this data, that they better not type in a number that's 0 or less, and a space, and we type the word and we also type in the less than symbol, the caret pointing to the left, and the equal. So it means less than or equal to 1,000. With our database, with any database out there, remember when you go to websites and they're asking for your information, they make you select from a list the states because they don't trust you to know how to spell all the states correctly, or to actually type in a non-existent state. We also have this kind of thing, that we don't want to let them enter something that will violate this rule. We're now all about the rules. And we don't want to just have Microsoft give us the message. Watch what happens. Let's go ahead and save it with this. Let's switch over to Datasheet View. And saving the changes. And it's going to validate some things. Remember, it says it requires a vendor name. I'm going to go yes. Now let's come over here and try to enter a negative number in quantity. I'm just going to pick one and try to enter negative 1. I hit enter, and I get a very unfriendly message. One or more values are prohibited by the validation rule greater than 0 or less than equal to 1,000. Set for vendor variance quantity, enter a value that expression for this field can accept. That is Microsoft trying to make you feel stupid and trying to impose their scary nerdiness upon you. We're going to make it be a happier message than that. Let's try out something else. Let's see if it'll let us blank out a name. Oh, look at that. It won't let me leave that field without fixing it. Even if I click somewhere else, it keeps bringing that up. What can you do? Just Control Z or type in a valid number. Control Z is the safest thing because it puts it back to what it was before. So you can Control Z before it takes the change. Let's see if it will let me blank out the vendor name. Let's see if I select that in the backspace and then try to leave. Oh, it does let me leave it blank for an existing one. I learned this morning, that I can undo and get that back. But if I come and try to enter a new one without having typed something in, let's just put a 123 for a street address. If I try to leave that row, it says, sorry, veterinary vendor's name cannot be blank. I don't know if this is a little bug that it lets you blank out an existing one but won't let you enter a new one with a blank name. Now, the only way to fix this one is either enter a name or Control Z so you're not starting a new record again. So when you see that message, after starting to enter a record, remember, if I start typing anything, it says, oh, I must be starting a new record. You cannot leave that line without having set a name, or it will say, sorry, I'm waiting for a name here. So Control Z, and I'm back. Remember that it won't let me type in a negative number for quantity anywhere because there's that validation rule. Let's go back and make that validation message a little friendlier. So I go back to the design view, and for that quantity, right below the validation rule, let's put a little friendlier text here. Say something much simpler, less scary. Let's just say something like, please, to be friendly, enter a number between 0 and 1,000. That's much less scary and friendlier because it says please, and we didn't have to have such complicated text. It violates the validation rules. Don't tell me the violation rules. Just tell me what I can enter. A number between 0 and 1,000. Now, if I go back to datasheet view, and I try to enter, after saving the changes, and I try to enter a wrong number here, a -10, I get a little friendlier message. It doesn't fix it for me. I wish it would do an undo.
Leave it blank, you know?
What's that?
You can leave it blank, you just can't have 0.
Right,
It's
right.
not required yet.
Yeah, it's because that's right, because we didn't say it was required. But a Control Z fixes it back to what it was before, and I can then come back to design view, and do a little bit more. Okay, so now we know how to require a field on the name, set required, and I can do a validation rule on the quantity, and also a default value. We've already seen the default value. I've also set a 1 for my default value on quantity, and also on the product type, let's set a default value for product type to be VAC, and the validation rule, we can apply a validation rule. Now I'm not sure, we'll see what happens. If it's a multi-value field, see if it lets you do this. We want to also apply a validation rule in this way. In the validation rule, they would like us to do this. Equal VAC space and the word or, and then equal MC space and or, and then equal sub. I'm not sure we actually have to type equal there. I think I've done it without the equal, but let's see if that will take it. And of course, let's make our validation text be a little friendlier of please enter VAC, MC, or SUP in this cell. Much friendlier than the obscure and scary and unfriendly Microsoft message. Now let's see if it'll let you save it and then view the data. So let's go back now to datasheet view, saving my changes. Because I added a new validation rule, it will actually check all the data right now. Does it pass the data integrity rules? And now let's try to enter an invalid value up here. Let's see if I enter ZZZ. Oh, there's my little validation rule message. And a Control Z will undo it because it won't let me leave until I have not violated the validation rule. So I have to do an undo before it lets me go to another record. I think, let's see if I go to another column. Oh, it won't even let me go to another column. So I can Control Z that and get back to the previous value. Now I think a better way in this, if I went back to my design view, I think a better thing that they could have done, in the lookup part of it, I could have had limited to list, and then I don't have the chance of typing something that's not in that list. I think this is a better way to just turn limit to list on, And let's see the effect of that. I go back to datasheet view, save my changes. Now I don't even have the chance to type something wrong. I can't backspace. Oh, let's see if it will let me backspace. I thought it wouldn't. It actually gives me a chance to go change the list. Well, that's a silly thing. I thought it would limit it to the list. So I can choose it from the list. It will complain because it was limiting it to the list. I thought in section 1 I couldn't even try to type something there. Maybe I forgot, maybe I didn't try typing something. It still lets you try to type something, which seems to me kind of silly when you told it limit it to the list. Let's see what happens if I click yes here. It's going to take me to that list of items that go in it. Yeah, look at that. It'll actually let me edit my list, which is I guess a little bit better, but I don't like that. I don't want it to be added to the list. So the validation rule is a better thing. So remember how we did that? Back in design view, I went to the validation rule right there. Now I'm not expecting you to remember the exact syntax of these validation rules, but just remember that there is a way to control what can be entered into our tables. Because remember, this is the foundation of our database. The data in our tables is the foundation and what supplies all the queries. If we have bad data or corrupt data in our database tables, it's going to be producing bad data. Missing vendors, charging the wrong price, losing sales. So that's why database people get paid a lot. And if you know about databases, even the basic concepts, you will do well. You will do better in your company than somebody that's only knows Excel. You'll know whether the database people are doing the right thing when they talk about what they want to sell you, when they talk about tables and queries. You'll at least have a clue what they're talking about. Okay, so we've changed validation rules. We've changed default values. I think that's the only thing we're doing. Yeah, I think that's the only thing we're doing, except we're going to go back and update some data in one of the tables. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to datasheet view now. Last time in our veterinary vendors table, we're simply going to make some changes. I've already shown you that if I try to enter a vendor without something in there, it won't let me go. We're going to change the address of Gaines Vet Supplies. We want to add Boulevard to the name of their address. It's West Haven Boulevard. Somebody forgot to type Boulevard, perhaps because it's very hard to spell. Boulevard. Remember, Access does not do spell checking. Let's see, can you tell it to do spell checking? I don't remember if you can. I don't, let's see here, is there a spell check? I wouldn't be surprised somewhere if there's a spell check. There it is, there is a spell checking, but I have to run it by hand. And it may come up with all sorts of spelling errors, but it doesn't check it as you go. Now remember how I could actually blank out a vendor name and it wouldn't complain? Let's try that. Let's try that. This one. I'm going to click on that. If I hit delete, let's see if it lets me go to another field. Look at that. It lets me go to another record even though I blanked out the vendor name. Do you know how I could fix that? Where would you go if you wanted to fix that? Don't let them enter a blank vendor name.
You have to make a list.
What? It'd be back in design view. Under vendor name, it is required, but look at here, it says allow zero length. Is left to be yes. Maybe I missed that. Let me go check. When we did that, did they tell us to change allow zero length? Let's see, way back. Maybe I missed it. Maybe that's why. Nope, they didn't tell us to set allow zero length. But let's turn allow zero length to 0 and see if that fixes that problem. Let's go back to datasheet view now. Saving my table, applying the rules. Now let's see if it'll let us blank out a name. Backspace all the way out, and oh, now it's not letting me blank out a name. It already wouldn't have let me enter a blank one at the start, but someone might have figured out, hey, I can enter a fake name and then go delete it, and now I have blank vendor name. So Control Z back to get what was there. Now we've actually improved it beyond what the book taught us just by exploring a little bit there in the design view properties right next to where I had required is, oh, do I allow it to be blank? I would think that even better, I should require that the name is maybe at least 5 characters, but that's rules that you don't have to worry about. That would be for the advanced class. Okay, so we've added a few rules. Now, let's see, it's time. I think we're ready to do the most dangerous and kind of scary and confusing things. So let's go down to that section here. We're going to change, or we're going to specify how things are related in our database. And I'm jumping to this here page. I'm jumping to page AC3-44. I'm closing this table because I want to focus on one thing and one thing only here. Very important at Emmaus. Database tools, relationships. Click on relationships and up pops a show table. We want to establish the relationships between all of our tables. So double click on each table listed there. So they show up in our database relationships page. And now I'm going to close the show dialog. This is just a taste of what the database designers go through. I'm going to double click to give me more room here. With this table here, this relationships designer, or yeah, I guess I called it designer, we draw lines between the things that are related in our database. I'm going to enlarge the appointments table because this is kind of central to all my tables in my database. Looking down through my appointment table, I see that whenever I make an appointment, I refer to a patient whom that appointment is for. Well, that appointment is for a patient over here, not over here in the patients table, right? There's my patients table. So when I refer to a patient, I am relating it to this number here. To establish that relationship clearly, I click and drag from one table or another. It doesn't matter which direction I go. I click and drag patient ID from that table to patient ID in this table, telling Access that when I'm referring to a patient by its patient ID, it's what's over here in the patients table. You'd think it would know that, but we want to make sure that that relationship is clear. And one very important thing as well, we want to turn on this little checkbox, enforce referential integrity. When we make an appointment and we refer to a patient, referential integrity means that patient must exist. Without this, I could type in made-up patient numbers, and Access would say, "Okay, I'll let you type in that number for a patient." But if it's not in the patients table, we know that our database is corrupted. So enforcing referential integrity means don't let anybody type in a invalid patient ID when I am listing their appointments. And then once we do that, we have this cute little line with an infinity and a 1 on there. That's called a many-to-one relationship. You don't have to worry about that at all. All you need to know is we must refer to a patient that exists. Double-clicking on that line lets me come back into that and see that enforced referential integrity is enabled. These other things, therefore, more advanced classes, if I change the names or delete things, make sure they get deleted. But don't worry about that. All you need to worry about is that first one. Referential integrity is very important in database tables. Yep.
When I go to do that, it says that data in this table appointments violates referential integrity rules. Like a little thing popped up.
Oh, let's go fix that. We got a message that came up. I'm going to click OK on mine, and in order to fix that, we have to close the relationships first, and we'll come back to this. So close relationships, saving any changes you have right now.
So should I press OK then?
Yeah, press OK, and then close relationships. And what you want to do now is go to your patients table, check to see what patients you have, C1, C2, F, and F1, okay? And then go to your appointments table and make sure that you haven't misspelled any of your patients' names here. It better be either F1, C2, or C1 to not violate that rule. Make sure there's not an extra space in any of them. Do you see any of your patient IDs that are wrong?
Yeah, I changed F1 to F1 so 3.
Yeah, so just fix that, and then you can close your table, and then we can go back to the database tools relationships. And now it will let you establish that. That's one little thing that if there is already a patient that doesn't exist, it'll say, sorry, I can't enforce it. Now, what you can do is just not check enforce until you, and then make the fix, and then come back and check it on, and then you're okay. So from now on, if you ever try to enter a patient here that does not exist in the patient's table, it will refuse that. So another, making sure that the integrity of our database is maintained. So another thing we're doing then, let's see, what else are we referring to in another table? Patient ID, appointment date, time, service abbreviation, that would refer to, well, that's a table, that's the thing we made up of. Let's go to treatment number. Oh, treatment number. That is this in this table over here. So we can drag treatment number over to this treatment number to establish that's an important relationship. It'll enforce, and we check enforce referential integrity, and click create. And let's readjust this little table so we don't have lines crossing behind other tables. Now our veterinarian, guess who that's referring to? Well, that's referring to this veterinarian. In this case, the name isn't the same, but that doesn't matter. If it's the same data type, like this is a short text and this is a short text, it will allow me to establish that relationship and again enforce referential integrity. Whenever we can, we want to enforce referential integrity and then create that relationship. And let's see, the owner. Well, that's referring to the owner up here in the owner's table. So I can drag owner. It doesn't matter which direction you drag from here to here or one to the other, and enforce referential integrity. And basically what we're doing here is establishing the structure, and it's like the more fancy validation of relationships. When I'm referring to things, they are not orphan, it's not orphan data that has no existing patient. Now with this table here, I'm not sure what to do with it because the veterinary vendor ID, is it ever referred to in anything? I don't think we don't have an orders table, so we don't have anyone yet referring or referencing our veterinary vendors. So we're going to leave that. There is no relationship established yet. Oh, I see one relationship here. When I'm referring to an owner ID from a patient, it's referring to the owner ID over here. So let's draw that line and see if we can arrange things so we don't have crossing lines. So owner ID here, I'm referring to an owner ID here in the owner's table. Referential integrity, yes, I can't refer to a non-existent owner. Create that relationship, and let's see if we can rearrange our boxes a little bit here so we don't have lines crossing. Put veterinarians over here and treatment cost up above. Try to avoid crossing lines, although it doesn't break it if they are crossing, it's just confusing to look at. Now, I have a little better view of my relationships between my tables. And I see how things are related to other things. Now, in official high-tech database building and coding, these tables are very important at the very start of planning out a database. For us, it's just a way of making it clear what's related to what.
Okay, what about animal type? But they're not, those aren't necessarily.
Right. That it would be bad to actually have that in a separate
Because they
table
would-
instead of typing it in. Yeah. And that's where when they do some more advanced database things, they say, wait a minute, if we'd like to be able to have more than just cats and dogs, let's have a table of what animal types are our patients. And this will be a reference to another table. And that's what database designers do as they improve their product and its software. So when you buy a program like say you're doing a patient appointment package that many service type companies would have, say they get an updated appointment software, likely they have done some redesign to make more features available to that software package. And often the work is paying some high buck database designer to redesign their tables. And now you have some taste of what that's all about. When they talk about databases now, you won't be as clueless as most people. I don't expect you to know all the details because it's hard stuff, and there's different kinds of databases out there too. But now at least you have a taste of what happens with databases. And I save that and close that. And I think that is, well, here's what we can do. We can save that and close that. And let's just for fun, let's go try to go edit our owners table. And just for fun, let's see if we can change, no, we can't change the owner ID because that's auto number. Let's go to our patients table. And let's try to specify an owner that doesn't exist and see what happens. O-3. Oh, it didn't complain. Maybe there is an O-3. Let's O-30. There we go. There is trying to violate the referential integrity. Now that we have that established, it won't let me refer to a non-existent owner and have a pet that's orphaned and wandering the streets alone, suffering, all because somebody did not specify referential integrity in their database. So that's what that's about. And to fix that, the easiest thing to do is just Control-Z, undo it back to what it originally was. And I'm going to do another undo because I mentioned, it won't undo it back to, wasn't it O-1 at the start? Look at that, an undo doesn't go back far enough. That's irritating. I thought changing that had an undo. Maybe it only has an undo one step back. I thought it had more than one step back. Okay, so now that you have established referential integrity, played with it a little bit, remember you can always go back to database tools and view those relationships. They will be saved there. If they add more tables, like somehow we make an order and we refer to a vendor that we order it from, that's where we'd have some relationship relating to our veterinary vendors. That is it for Access projects for you. You can save that, upload it to Schoology. The plan for Monday is to review, so you ace that final. You're going to have an Excel. The main thing on the final is going to be an Excel project and an Access project. There will be a short Word and a short PowerPoint, probably 1 or 2 slide PowerPoint, just to refresh your mind and some basic PowerPoint stuff. That hopefully is like easy free points for you on your final. And then Excel project will be a budget table kind of thing, and lots of other details about Excel, and then an Access project. You'll be building an Access database from scratch, given instructions like create a table of your CD collection. One table will be the names of your CDs, another table will be the names of artists, and establish a relationship between your table. I will tell you what fields will go on that. we'll be reviewing all that on Monday. So come Monday to practice for the final, which is either Wednesday afternoon, I think right after lunch, let's check, or Friday. You are allowed to come to either session of the final because it is Friday, the very last final on Friday. If I go to, oh, there's the navigator right there. If I go to fall, if I go to class schedule, fall, final schedule, it's 11 o'clock Friday or 3 o'clock Thursday. You can come to 3 o'clock Thursday if you like. I will give, if the people in section 1 really insist that they sit where they normally sit, I feel I have to give them priority. So if they're sitting in where you like to sit, you can just log in as a student on any other machine. Or you can come Friday if you want to. If you have other heavy duty finals on Thursday, you want to take a break and come Friday, that's fine. I will be here either time, and you are welcome to take it either time. I won't kick you out. Usually people are finished before the deadline, but I don't plan on kicking you out at 4:30. But try not to plan on spending 5 hours on it. I did have one person that's literally spent 6 hours on it, but it was a English language issue, and it was the poor person was just instructions with computer stuff. If you don't understand the English language, just imagine how hard that would be. This poor guy just was not understanding just some really basic instructions. But I helped him through it. Yeah, it was a long conversation, long phone call. So, you ready now? Upload AC3. Have a great weekend. Enjoy your finishing up all your projects. And we'll see you Monday. And I'll upload this